Hey there guys, welcome back to the show. In this video I'm going to talk a bit about what's been happening in South Africa from the energy crisis with Eskom to the election that's supposed to happen this year and the water crisis, which is becoming very big news in this country. So do stay tuned and do click that like button if you do find this video useful. Now first we will be touching on the ongoing energy crisis in South Africa. Now, for the past few months, many of you noticed that the ongoing blackouts which we've had have suddenly had a pause. We haven't been experiencing severe load shedding, and this is why.
Now, Eskom burns over 100 million rand worth of diesel a day to keep the lights on. That's according to Electricity Minister Kosian.
100 million rands worth of diesel a day is being burnt, and this is because we have severe blackouts. The problem hasn't been solved. The government is only trying to look good before the elections, which is supposed to happen on the 29th of May this year. So immediately after that election, that is when I do think things are going to get extremely bad. Many people have been talking about stage 16 load shedding. I think that's a bit alarmist, but it could actually happen, and that is days without having electricity in some regions of South Africa, and this would be absolutely devastating. Now, to get further into the story,
South Africa is facing a crippling energy crisis affecting business and slowing the country's economic growth. Ramokgopa says Eskom is in the process of converting some power plants from diesel to gas.
Now this will be an extremely long process, this conversion alone, and it will cost a lot of money. So it's still going to be expensive. The prices of electricity will still increase during this conversion, and even after the conversion it's not going to get much better. The best alternative in my opinion would be to convert to nuclear power. Now, if you are South African, you already know this would take years, especially under this government. Sure, we'd be having years of looting, of things being worth 10 times what they're supposed to be, and the eventual product that they would deliver would be inefficient and would have constant issues. So the first logical step would be to get rid of the ANC as the ruling party, to replace them with a party that is not as inefficient and not as corrupt. So all of the parties have the issues, but I do think the DA would do a better job here. Or even a coalition government, which would include the ANC, which would mean that they would be desperate to win back their support. The best option that we do have is to turn to nuclear, but we have so many agreements with other countries that we won't use nuclear energy. Now, South Africa is the only nation on earth that actually denuclearized. That means that we had a nuclear arsenal, but we deactivated it when we became a democratic country in 1994 with the election of Nelson Mandela to being the president of this country. Now, let me just say this, his family are extremely corrupt, and his successors to the presidency from within the ANC have had many issues. We've had severe incompetence to severe corruption, and things are only getting worse in this country. But to get back to the topic of nuclear energy, we would have to renegotiate with our international trading partners and allies so that we could build nuclear power stations, and that would absolutely help us in the long term.
Just on a single day, we banned diesel to the tune of about 110 million rands. So that's how expensive this is. Over a period of 3 months,
So this is the Minister of Electricity, and even he is confirming that we are burning over 100 million rands worth of diesel per day.
we banned about 9.8 billion rands. It's unsustainable by any measure. Even if we can make the point that we're saving the South African economy, I think that argument will get to a stage where you can't sustain it. And therefore, and someone must pay for it. And how you pay for it is that you are going to find it in the tariff.
So, as a working person in South Africa, I've seen many people being laid off at my job. I won't get into what type of work I do, but many people have been let go. We did try to move over to solar power, but unfortunately, that is severely taxed by the government. So even if you try to resolve the issue, they will still tax you heavily for trying to resolve this issue. Many people have been laid off from their jobs. Now the government doesn't seem to care about this. and they will run those diesel generators until the end of the election, so they can say they resolve the issue. Meanwhile, as soon as that election ends, we are heading to severe stages of load shedding. Moving on to the next story.
In the middle-class suburb of Johannesburg, clean water is being lost through burst pipes.
Now, they may say it's clean water, but we have had issues in South Africa with cholera outbreaks, so a lot of our drinking water may be contaminated. So that's just a little note before continuing on.
Experts say South Africa's commercial capital is losing 25% of clean drinking water through leaks. Parts of the city can go for days and weeks without a drop to drink.
Now, the city of Johannesburg is being governed by the ANC, and they've been governing it for over 2 decades now. Now, this has led to the lack of maintenance on the pipes, same thing that we're experiencing with the energy crisis and load shedding. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the money which is allocated for the maintenance of our power grid, of the water and the pipes in Johannesburg, and of even the railway stations and the railway lines that we have, is being diverted into the pockets of corrupt politicians, and this has been the case for many decades, and unfortunately we will be experiencing the results of that for many decades to come. The first step, in my opinion, to solve the problem would be to get rid of the ANC as the national government or as the ruling party. So again, coalition government would also work, as that would increase accountability across the board, and they would be desperate to change things. But I think the country is absolutely fed up with the way that the ANC has been running things. Continuing on with the story.
Being the result of over 10 to 15 years of neglect on maintenance of our infrastructure. So from the pipes to wastewater treatment works to pump stations, not enough money was being spent on the maintenance.
So I do think we have a lot of money that was allocated to the maintenance, but the majority of that was stolen by the government.
Supplies are also erratic in poorer neighborhoods. In Soweto Township, one area can have water, while elsewhere it's dry. People without water ask neighbors for help.
We have to fetch water for the kids. They must wash and go to school. We have to cook for them, and they have to bath. So this is stressful for us. And our councillors are doing nothing about this thing.
Empty buckets.
Well, you do get what you vote for, unfortunately, and it's a terrible thing that the people are suffering, but that is what you vote for. That is what you get.
We have no water!
With the general election due in May, frustration and anger over failing public services is a big issue for voters. Some analysts say the governing African National Congress could lose its parliamentary majority for the first time since apartheid ended in 1990.
So that would be an absolute blessing. If the ANC is kicked out of government, or they're no longer the ruling party, that would be an absolute blessing for South Africa, and it starts a long process of repairing the damage that they've done.
94. Businesses are also struggling with the water crisis.
This is a restaurant in the community, and that's the owner over there. She says she can't operate, she can't work because there is no water. The taps in the area have been dry for about 2 weeks, and people in the area say they don't know when
Just imagine going 2 weeks without water.
they'll get water again.
Politicians say climate change and the recent heatwave are to blame for this latest crisis. For many,
They're trying to actually blame the climate crisis for this issue, when clearly it's a case of bad governance and corruption.
many families struggling to get a life essential, that's not what they want to hear. Haru Mutasa, Al Jazeera, Johannesburg.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in more videos about South Africa or any other place in the world, do leave a comment below and do click that like button. Peace. Now, just to be 100% clear, I am not a fan of democracy. I don't support it, but the Democratic Alliance is a better alternative to the African National Congress, better known as the ANC. But if you put a dog in power in South Africa, he would do a better job than the ruling party. So that is not a big compliment. The DA is a degenerate progressive party, but they can govern better than the ANC. That is my personal opinion.